It's a Thursday morning in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. The sun is already high, bouncing off glass and steel, warming the sidewalks. Commuters cross busy streets, car horns echo, and a delivery truck idles at the curb. Everything feels ordinary. Then the sound. At first it's faint, a high-pitched scream, a woman's voice, a child. People stop, they look around, trying to place it, only to realize it's coming from up above. Heads tilt back, and 11 stories up on the balcony of the International Dunes Hotel, there's movement. A woman in a long dress is grappling with her children. One clings tightly to the railing, fingers wrapped around the metal, and her mother prying. And then the child falls. Gasps erupt on the street. Someone screams, "Oh my God!" But before anyone can process what they've just seen, another body slips from the balcony. And then another and another. People are frozen below, watching, transfixed as child after child drops from the sky. This is the story of the David family. A mother, 7 children, and a father who claimed to be God. A family who lived for over a year in a luxury hotel suite, cut off from the world, until one morning in 1978, when their devotion ended in the most horrific way imaginable. Before we get too far into that, my name is Matt, and this is Strange Ordinary. We upload 2 strange but true stories every week and hope you'll consider subscribing. Immanuel David was born Bruce Longo, but he shed that name when he reinvented himself. To his family and a few loyal followers, he was no ordinary man. He was Jesus Christ, the Holy Ghost, and God all at once. He was an imposing figure, over 6'4", more than 300 pounds, with a long beard and braided hair. Immanuel dominated every room he walked into. His presence alone was enough to silence a crowd, and his family hung on his every word. He was once part of the Latter-day Saints Church, but by the late 1960s was excommunicated. He claimed the church had strayed and that God had chosen him instead. He preached prophecies of calamity, he demanded tithes, and insisted that he deserved a share of church revenues, none of which was ever recognized by the church. But to his family, his word was absolute. His wife Rachel believed in him completely, and so did their 7 children, Rebecca, David, Joseph, Deborah, Joshua, Elizabeth, and the 15-year-old, the oldest, Rachel Jr. The family lived like shadows for more than a year. They rented a suite on the 11th floor of the International Dunes Hotel, and it was not cheap. It was $90 a day, or more than $30,000 for their entire stay. In today's money, that's $450 a day, or $165,000. Immanuel paid each day at the front desk with a crisp $100 bill, despite not having a job. Hotel staff described them as complete loners. They never used the pool, they didn't play outside. The kids were homeschooled in the room and didn't talk to staff without permission. To the other guests, they barely existed. Behind closed doors, though, Immanuel controlled everything. And outside, the FBI was circling. In 1978, agents opened an investigation into Immanuel for wire fraud. One of his followers had already been convicted of a scheme where donations were collected under false pretenses, and Immanuel was next in line. He was a man who claimed to be God, but even prophets can feel the walls closing in. On August 2nd, 1978, Immanuel borrowed a van and drove into the canyon. He rigged a hose from the exhaust pipe into the cabin, sealed the windows, and sat back as carbon monoxide filled the air. By the time anyone found him, it was too late. When police delivered the news to Rachel the next morning at the hotel, she didn't scream, she didn't collapse. She only told officers that she couldn't afford a burial. But inside that suite, the atmosphere changed instantly. Police later said these people would be completely lost without the father, and they were right. Because within 24 hours, Rachel David would take her children out onto that balcony, and Salt Lake City would witness one of the most horrifying murder-suicides in its history. It was late morning, August 3rd. From the sidewalk, delivery drivers and pedestrians noticed unusual movement on the 11th floor, and then came the screams. Rachel had gathered her children on the balcony. The younger ones were terrified. Witnesses say they saw tiny hands wrapped around the railing, white-knuckled, refusing to let go. Their mother pried at their fingers one by one until they lost their grip, and she pushed. The older children, however, didn't resist. Investigators later found 3 stacks of hotel chairs on the balcony. At least 3 of the older kids had dragged them out, climbed up, and jumped. Willingly. The hotel manager would later say, and I quote, "Those older children were too old to be thrown out. They could have restrained the lady easily, but they didn't." Their devotion to their father, to the idea that he was God, was stronger than their instinct to survive. From below, people on the street were horrified. Cars stopped in the middle of traffic. A 16-year-old boy named Jason Maxfield watched in disbelief as children fell from the sky. A truck driver dropped to his knees, shouting, "No! No!" 6 of the victims landed on the canopy roof of a nearby coffee shop 9 floors down, with the other 2 impacting the sidewalk 11 stories down. The sound was sickening. One witness remembered the crowd's reaction. "The people here on the street were furious," they would go on to say. "They yelled obscenities at the woman and yelled for her to jump after all the children had gone." And moments later, she did. 15-year-old Rachel Jr. survived the fall. Her fall was broken when her body struck the hotel gutter before hitting the ground. The gutter absorbed just enough of the impact to keep her alive. Some also speculate that because Rachel Jr. leapt off the balcony willingly, that her more relaxed state also had a role to play in her surviving the fall. When paramedics reached her, she was mangled but breathing. She spent months in the hospital, and though she lived, her injuries would never fully heal. Survival, though, brought its own torment. In the years that followed, Rachel Jr. attempted suicide multiple times, believing that her father was still calling to her. The victims were identified as Rebecca, who was 5 years old, David, 6, Joseph, 8, Deborah, 9, Joshua, 10, Elizabeth, 14, and their mother, Rachel, 38. Hotel staff told reporters the family had lived there for more than a year, paying in cash, never interacting. They described them as loners who had essentially vanished from society. Police confirmed what they already suspected. Immanuel David had been under FBI investigation for fraud. His death was the trigger. Without him, Rachel believed their only path was to follow him into the afterlife. For Salt Lake City, the sight of 8 bodies hitting the street in broad daylight was a trauma that lingered for years. For investigators, the case was a chilling reminder of what happens when blind devotion erases even the most basic human instincts. The David family's murder-suicide is one of the darkest chapters in Utah history, not because of the number of victims, but because of who they were. Children, some willing, and others fighting desperately to hold on. A mother torn between love and fanaticism, convincing herself that killing her children was the right thing to do. And a lone survivor, forced to carry memories no one should ever have to carry. The International Dunes Hotel still stands today, though under a different name. Today it's a Holiday Inn Express. Guests come and go, checking into rooms, sipping coffee in the lobby, with no idea that in 1978 a family ended their lives just floors above. It's a story that feels too strange to be real, but it is. The David family believed that they were following God. What they were really following was a man facing prison, a man who wasn't coming back. And in that belief, 6 children and their mother lost their lives, right in the middle of a busy city. If you found today's story chilling, subscribe to Strange Ordinary. Please share the video with someone who follows true crime or cult psychology and leave a comment. It really helps these stories reach more people. So thank you so much for listening and for standing in the shadows with me. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.